Welcome to the Power of Great. I'm your host, Matt Crane, and every single week we come to you right here on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and we bring you interviews. We bring you guests, entrepreneurs, CEOs, 9-to-5ers, but more importantly, people who along the way have recognized that their current situation is not their defining moment. And this week, I am lucky. I've got Kim Orlesky on the podcast. And let me tell you a little bit about Kim. She's the leading sales coach. She's a Success Magazine most inspirational blogger. And she's a contributor to major online publications and is continuing to expand her presence with international speaking, video, and podcasting opportunities. Kim began to create a brand that will be recognized by entrepreneurs across North America for how to sell more faster. And through that, her courageous to quit her life and see the world by herself inspired her to use her mastery in sales to help entrepreneurs make communication shifts that lead to stronger relationships and more revenue. Her dream is to teach entrepreneurs how to create stronger client connections that will lead to more companies making a massive positive impact on the world. Kim Orlesky, welcome to the Power of Great.
Thank you so much, Matt. I am so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Yeah, I tell you, we were talking a little bit offline, and everybody has that thing that draws them to people, especially in this world of social media and online. And I was telling you that I had come across some things you had done online via Amazon, something that you would like to see this kind of thing, and it led me to your website, kimorlesky.com, and I saw a book you had written. That's called How to Be a Nomad, Go from Business Suit to World Backpacker. And I said, man, I gotta dig into this because you have such a super professional look, and the world of nomad is almost like these millennials that don't have a care in the world that are floating off into space. And I think it's a misunderstood concept. And yet you were able to really start defining it in a way that, like, professionals like myself who had been in the corporate world, it started to create some intriguement. So kind of walk me through that process and where did all that come from?
Yeah, Matt, this is such a great story. So, I mean, a lot like you, right? I worked in corporate sales. I was in it for 9 years. I'm pretty some big names like Xerox, right? American Express. There was medical devices and career companies, like a few different companies. And I had this moment where I woke up one day and I thought to myself, is this my life? Like, is this what I really want to do for the rest of my life? Do I want to live, the next 20, 30 years, in corporate sales, maybe work my way up the ladder, eventually retire? And one of the things that I knew that I really wanted to do was travel. And the only problem with traveling and having that, inherent need inside of you is you can only go so far for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. Right. And I thought, if I wanted to do something big with my life, I needed to make a drastic shift. And so it was inspired by a breakup, because everything is. And so, I had this moment where, I broke up with this guy and I thought, what am I going to do with my life? Am I going to start all over again? And what is that going to look like? And like this moment of divine intervention, I was in the shower and it was like, just go travel, right? Go do what you want to do. And I had this moment of panic, but I decided to go for it. At the time I was 31, I was, well educated. I had a great career underneath me, and I decided, what? Sell the house, right? I don't even know if it's a house that I want to come back to anymore, and trade everything for this backpack, like live a completely different life for a short period of time. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. And like life-changing is not even, it doesn't even define how cool this was, because it really was. Over the course of 6 months that followed, I did 17 countries on 4 different continents, all by myself, trading literally business suits and pretty dresses and everything for a backpack and a pair of flip-flops, and just going from place to place and just really feeling this whole concept of being inspired by people, by the world, and by all this creative energy that I started to achieve while I was, going from place to place.
I love that. And I love how you really took it from the concept of kind of create this new version of you, right? And I think that's really neat.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I was trying to redefine myself, right? I didn't really know what I was like, it wasn't like I was trying to create something that wasn't there. More than anything, I was actually trying to eliminate the things that I no longer needed about myself, right? I was living this life that I was constantly aspiring for the nicer car and the more expensive bottles of wine. And, like it was just this constant like rat race. And I decided, if I strip everything away and I get down to my core, what is it that's really going to inspire me? And what is it that, I want to help, motivate the world in? Because I think at the end of the day, we all have this wonderful gift, and it takes some of us a little bit longer to find what that gift is we want to present the world. For me, I was in my 30s before I finally figured it out. But in the grand scheme of things, it's all, cumulative, right? You have all these events and, other pieces that start to all bring together to kind of create something amazing.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you. The power of great, we talked about a little bit. Your current situation is not your defining moment. It was until I was in my 30s where I started to define who I thought that I was the whole time. But I was in this race of thinking I had to aspire to be these things in order to be considered successful, when the whole time I just needed to be myself.
Absolutely.
So you talk about stripping away all those things.
Yes.
Through that process, what was the biggest challenge with that? I wouldn't say transformation, but with this new way of being Kim.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was coming around to the concept that, I was really defining who I was by, status figures, or by the idea of, expensive cars and lunches and everything else like this. And so when I, kind of like moved away, right? I went from like 5-star all-inclusive vacations to all of a sudden sleeping in 2-star hotels with like cockroaches. And I remember seeing the first cockroach and be like, okay, it's just a cockroach. And then you see the second one, you're like, and I think I'm going to find a different room. This isn't just a one-off. But those were really cool experiences for me, right? To the point where like, I had, less than a week's worth of clothes, right? I went from like, entire closets and like 100 pairs of shoes to knowing I had 2 pairs of shoes, and like, I knew exactly what I wanted to wear. And as I started to go through this process, I realized what was kind of more of a definition of myself. For me, I love wearing pretty dresses. And so I found myself buying, these cute little backpacking type of dresses that I could always wear. I love that feminine side of me. But at the same time, I knew that when I came back, the other things that I spent so much time being concerned about, such as, celebrity gossip and, just ridiculous things on TV, was no longer what I wanted to be a part of my life. I wanted to consume, knowledge and content, but I also wanted to create. And that was something that I never knew before. I never knew that I had this ability to write and this ability to communicate with others on a more heart-centered basis, because when we're in corporate sales, everything is very tough and we stare people down across a boardroom table. And and so to include that heart center was an interesting moment for me as well.
That's an intriguing point that you bring up when you're thinking about the corporate world, and you're thinking about this, I wouldn't say this transformation, more or less this tug of war with what your corporate world's telling you to do and what your internal kind of self is telling you to do. So, you talked about the challenge was really trying to find that balance.
Mm-hmm.
So what's been the biggest reward with stripping away all those things and really becoming the Kim that you've always wanted to become?
The biggest reward, I would say, is, kind of understanding that it doesn't take a lot to be able to have a massive impact on the world. When I started to, kind of slow down, I also suffered from, a lot of anxiety when I was, living in my corporate life. And, one of the things I committed to was, meditating every day. And I realized that when I actually really slowed down the process, when I started to enjoy the moments that I was actually in, I was a more authentic version of myself, right? I could actually connect with people on a different level. There was no longer like this, corporate Kim persona that existed. And then underneath there was personal Kim, right? Which only a few people got a chance to see. And so that was kind of the biggest lesson for me was, that this, corporate side of me and this personal side of me can actually be the same person. And I can still have, the ability to create, the ability to, make income, the ability ability to, connect with people, but it didn't have to be this dichotomy in terms of what face I was turning on at any given time.
Whew, absolutely love that response. I mean, it really excites me when when you hear people and you interview people and you talk with people every day and you really see them talk about their purpose. It's like the light, you can see the lights going off, and it's just such a great feeling to know that, man, like no matter what happens, everything you do in your life is really solely on you. And that's a great feeling, also kind of scary. But, for all of you listening out there on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, and Pandora, once again, you're with the Power of Great with myself, Matt Crane, and we've got Miss Kim Orlesky on the podcast with us. And I want to give a big shout out to the team at Rush Impact Media, who do an amazing job of powering up the Power of Great. And without them, a lot of this would not be possible. Kim, so 4 different continents, you travel the world, you trade your love for dresses to pick up a backpack, and then you come back to reality, so to speak.
Yes.
What was that moment like?
There is something called like backpacker depression. Right? You get so used to the idea of, sleeping in a different bed every 3 days, right? And you get used to the idea of only having, enough of everything you need in your life that would literally fit in the size of a chair. To all of a sudden having space again and having the ability to, sleep in and actually not even having an agenda. And despite the fact that I was traveling and some days I didn't have an agenda, sometimes it would just be go to a coffee shop and read. The fact that I didn't even have that, it was we're a very sedentary lifestyle in North America where we are happy to sit in front of a TV and watch shows for 3-4 hours at a time. And that was something that I had to kind of get accustomed to again. The other things was, just starting to part my way. I became so addicted to my phone before I left. And when I traveled, I didn't even have a phone, which was, such a weird concept for me. I think I panicked for the first couple days. And then afterwards, I was like, I don't actually need it, right? I don't actually need to check Facebook all the time. That wasn't improving my life. And I started to look at things with a little bit more intention. Now I find, because as life starts to take over, right, we come in with this, ideal on what our life is going to look like when we get back from traveling. And of course, regular life starts to take over and, we start to get bored and what's on Netflix. But now I start to think about things with intention. So it's like, if I'm going to watch a show, am I doing it in some way to better my life? Is it just to relax, or am I just doing it for background noise? Because if it's background noise, then I, want to try to do without it. I also look at, kind of, spending more quality time with friends and family now, right? I'm very active on Facebook now that, I'm starting to build this brand. But I also try to not spend too much time on it, that I'm stripping away the idea of relationships, right? Where, if my friends are getting engaged or something, I'm picking up the phone to congratulate them, not, putting a little comment on Facebook saying, hey, congrats on the engagement, right? There's so much more meaning when you get the phone call or the text versus the Facebook comment.
I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the great points to that and how we've lost touch with real human engagement, even with our friends, is that I get more people saying happy birthday on Facebook now than I do that'll text me and call me. And I don't know if that's just a convenience thing or if it really shows me that when you strip away all that stuff, you're always going to still have that core that you can count on that's going to be there for you. And I think that's very important as well.
Yeah, and we have to nurture that in both ways. I think that's the important thing as well, right? It's one thing to, understand who our core is coming to us, but we need to make sure that we're nurturing it back.
100% agree. And I actually like how you said that. You got to nurture it both ways.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. Building out this brand, you started this course, this 90 days to results. So kind of walk us through the development process, what led you to creating that course and what people can expect when the new course launches on November 1st.
Yeah, so it is a year-long course, despite the fact that we call it 90 days to results. But the whole idea behind the course is the first part is for a lot of entrepreneurs or small business owners that are at that plateau stage in their business, right? Where, maybe they've been able to get through to the certain points, but they're probably still in the solopreneur stage where they're ready to grow and expand. So the idea is for that first 90 days, we really focus on getting them the results, right? How are they going to be able to sell more? How are they going to be able to craft their message, their value proposition, the way that they communicate with their clients, and getting to that point where we actually kind of slow them down a little bit in that sales process. Oftentimes, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I almost like to call it like the product service purge, right? Where they throw out so much information and then, oh, here, by the way, there's a price, that the clients never actually continue on. And so we go through, a slower down process. But by the end of that first 90 days, I want to see them already to that point where they're doubling and tripling their income. And we set aggressive goals right off the get-go in order for them to feel like this is actually, number one, it's lofty. But if they're able to achieve it, great. We continue on for the rest of the year after that, just to kind of work more on the business and continue on. Because at the end of the day, if the person doesn't actually get 3 times the results in 90 days, maybe they're only getting 2.5 times, nobody's going to complain. But at the same time, I want to get them to that point where, by the end of that year, this time next year, they can't even picture their company the way they are. They've already have like 3, 4, 5 employees hired underneath them because they've grown and they've expanded and they've invested in their company so much. So yes, it does start on November 1st. Thank you.
And I actually like the unique approach you took to this, right? Because I think about companies and I think about corporations, and they always have that 90-day probationary period, right? Yeah. And what you framed it as, and I just picked up on what you were saying, is that what they really want to see is what kind of results you can produce in 90 days.
Yes.
And I love what you just did there with that, is that, hey, in the 90 days, let's get results.
Yes.
Right? Let's get you the results you need so then you can see the benefit of the remaining year on what we're going to do to really take that business to the next level. I love that spin on that. And I don't know if that was the intention or if I just went into it really deep thought. But regardless, as an entrepreneur, someone that went through that struggle moment, I love the take on that.
Yeah, thank you. That was very intentional, the way we created it and everything, because we don't want people to get course fatigue as they're going through it, right? But if they start to see results really fast, we know that we're going to be able to carry them even further than that.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. You've launched the Kim Orlesky Show, this podcast that we were talking a little bit offline. Hey, I think 4 or 5 episodes maybe now, and
4 episodes now. Yes,
4 episodes, and you've interviewed some pretty awesome people in a short amount of time. Folks such as Blair, Grant Cardone, Neil Patel. So walk me through the process on how you went after getting those people to come on the show and what it was like to interview those folks.
Oh my goodness. So Blair was my very first interview. And to be completely honest, I had not known a ton about him before this moment. I had actually seen his name cross through an email that I had received. And I looked him up and I thought, you know what, if he's going to be working with this guy, chances are he's probably willing to work with me. And I went ahead and I contacted him and I heard back right away. And so as I'm doing my research before every podcast, I had this moment where I was actually pretty fangirling. Getting really nervous. I'm like, this is actually a really big deal. But when it came to really going after some of these names, I mean, these names are super impressive and everything. But what a lot of people don't know is, you and I were chatting about this offline. I said, I probably sent 100 emails to 100 different names, knowing that the science of sales says that if you make the action, you get the result. And I'm like, all I need to get is 3 or 4 people to possibly say yes. And if you can catch these people just by luck, chance, whatever, especially if they're releasing a book, a new program, something else like this, they say yes to every opportunity because they want to help get their product out there as quickly as possible. So in this case, I was really lucky. Blair was launching a book. Grant Cardone was launching a book. Neil Patel was launching a conference. And so, of course, they said yes to these opportunities. And now, because of those were my first initial moments, it starts to really snowball into even bigger names and everything because people are seeing, okay, well, this is her caliber of the people that she's interviewing. So yeah, we'll agree with it. Somebody obviously sees something that we don't see yet. So we're going to say yes. And and it was really cool. I mean, even the Grant Cardone one, I actually kind of knew. I fangirled a little bit on that, but it really has opened the door to even more opportunities. I Google search, Grant Cardone contact, right? I find them on LinkedIn and everything. And a little secret, and hopefully I'm not getting things away. LinkedIn is amazing. Okay. So if you're not currently using LinkedIn, a lot of these like high-end people and celebrities don't actually realize that when they put their email address in there, it's public information on LinkedIn. And so you can actually email some of these people like to their direct line and not like through some format on their website.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, LinkedIn is huge, and I actually booked Grant Cardone on our podcast through Snapchat.
Oh, good.
So,
cool.
but to your point, though, you launched this podcast, and you just did what you knew what to do. You didn't put this like unreasonable expectation on yourself. You just did what you knew what to do, and it paid off. And to your point, you're exactly right. I love what you said there. You get these names because of not who you were, but because of what you did.
Yeah.
And because of that, people say, well, someone knows something that maybe we don't, so let's find out more. I love that.
Yeah.
So I can see with you when you talk about the podcast, it's exciting for you.
It is, yes.
So what's next for you with the podcast?
Yeah, and it's funny because I love sharing the information that a lot of these, best-selling authors, entrepreneurs, business people have. But I gain so much more personally. So it's actually what I really didn't realize was that this is actually almost a selfish venture now, because now I'm starting to interview people that I can possibly learn from and get some great takeaways. The next steps with the podcast is I'm going to continue to release some great interviews. I have some really cool names lined up, everything from the digital marketing space all the way to like co-founders of the #1 wine in the world, which is kind of cool. I'm pregnant right now, but I know like I love my wine, so I'm counting down the months before I can have some more wine again. But different types of stories, right? And the intention behind it as well is not only to hear about their successes and how they got to where they are, but as entrepreneurs and business owners, I think the biggest one that I love asking is kind of around their biggest failure and what they learned from it. Because I think sometimes we believe that, a person like Grant Cardone is this unicorn, right? He created $100 million company, because he is just really cool. And what we don't realize is that he struggles the same way as everyone else. And I interviewed one woman she has the #6 best-selling blog in the world, Sharon Drew Morgan. And she, told me, she's like, I cry every day, Kim. She's like, because I never actually see myself as the success that everyone claims me to be. And I think not to, depress my audience, but I think those stories are really cool because it really brings us humility back to the idea that, when we truly believe, despite how successful the world is, despite how much impact we have, all of us at the end of the day are still really human.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something else that I think most people need to take away from what you're talking about there is that all these successful people are in the 1% and they're trying to reach as many of the 99% as they can. And we're the channels that they can do that through.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that we have the ability to bring out more of their human side because they relate to where we are in retrospect to where they were before they got to where they were at, or where they are now. And I think that's just like really something for me with the podcast that I really enjoy. Like I can't wait for 5 years from now to look to see where Kim is and Kim to look to see where Matt is and like how awesome that next podcast is going to be.
I know, we're really like clinking like champagne glasses on a yacht or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or we might be, podcasting from Mars. Who knows? So, congratulations, by the way, on expecting. That's awesome. Exciting news. And my wife felt your sentiments there. She loves her wine and she was counting down the days so she could have hers as well. So
I'm like, I'm constantly, I get my husband to like order a glass of like Cabernet just so I can smell it. I'm like, I just need to smell it.
That's awesome. So Kim, there's a lot of awesome things happening for you right now. Facebook, website, courses. Where can people go to find out more about Kim and how can they reach out to you to possibly figure out if they're the right fit for you and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you mentioned a lot of the different platforms. My website is almost up to date, right? I think I fall into like the category of, I have a hard time, keeping everything. But KimOrlesky.com is the best way of learning more about me, all of my projects and everything. It also has feeds to my social media. In terms of social media, the best one for me is Twitter, right? I still love Twitter, and you can find me at Kim Orlesky, just all one word, to get a hold.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Kim Orlesky right here on The Power of Great, 90 days to results. You definitely want to get over to KimOrlesky.com, and you want to get over to Twitter, and you want to communicate with her because she is up and coming, absolutely stud in this entrepreneurial world. And I'm excited to see where she takes the Kim Orlesky show as well. But every week I'll leave you with this. Success is not measured by what you step out of, rather by what you are committed to step into. And I appreciate you allowing me to be your host right here on The Power of Great, and we'll see you next week.